Okay, let's unpack this. A story from the heart of Las Vegas, a city where the glitz and glamour often hide a much grittier reality.
Oh, absolutely. It's a
Okay.
place built on risk and reward, right?
Mhm.
On money changing hands. And sometimes the businesses tied to that operate very much in the shadows.
Yeah, exactly. And for this deep dive, we've got quite a stack of sources that give us a really layered look. News articles covering years, bits from a true crime book about Vegas.
I'll look at a specific Supreme Court ruling, which is fascinating, and even a transcript from another podcast that covered this.
Right. So they let us explore not just the events themselves, but the context, the legal stuff, the, human drama involved.
It's quite a mix.
Our mission here is to piece together the puzzling disappearance and murder of a Las Vegas bookmaker, the woman who came into his life, and the truly strange turns the investigation and the legal battles took later on.
And hopefully pull out the key insights for you.
Okay, so let's start with the man at the center of it all, Bruce Weinstein. He was raised back east in Liberty, New York, and interestingly, came from a family that was already in the bookmaking business.
Yeah, that family connection seems pretty crucial. His father apparently started the operation after they moved out west
Yeah.
to L.A. So Bruce basically grew up in this world. He kind of took to it naturally.
And he eventually lands in Las Vegas, builds his own successful illegal sports bookmaking operation, bid operation. And he was also quite the high roller gambler himself.
Right. Now, the descriptions of Bruce,
Yeah.
is there something else? A big guy, around 300 pounds,
Yeah.
known for a silver ponytail. And the source called it vast girth.
Huh. Okay.
But that wasn't the whole picture, apparently. People also said he had this huge personality, great sense of humor, was the life of the party,
Oh.
loved food, restaurants,
Sounds like a character.
had an infectious laugh.
Hmm.
And get this detail, his daughter said he never wore a shirt, no
Right.
matter what.
Never wore a shirt. Wow. Okay, definitely a character.
Total character.
But despite that, larger than life thing, he was also a creature of habit. And this routine becomes incredibly important later.
Right.
Usually in bed by 9 or 9 through 8 p.m., like clockwork. Up super early, 5 or 6 a.m. Called his parents daily. Another detail.
Mm-hmm.
And crucially, he was constantly in touch with his office manager, Brian Foster, first thing in the morning to set the betting lines. His business was apparently handling huge amounts, like hundreds of thousands a week, in wagers.
Yeah, that daily routine wasn't just, a personal quirk. It was absolutely vital to how he ran things. If that pattern broke,
People notice.
his employees, his family, they'd know instantly. It was like his professional anchor.
And he came from a close-knit family. You mentioned they were involved in business. His mother, Sylvia White, father, Fred White, 2 sisters, and a brother, Stephen Weinstein.
Who was his partner and best friend, apparently.
Right. And he also had a young daughter.
At his funeral, there were nearly 100 people, friends, family, sharing stories. His brother Stephen talked about their relationship partners doing a lot of, quote, screaming and scheming.
Yeah.
His sister Robin mentioned he was a risk taker, liked steering a boat into the roughest part of Lake Tahoe, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Bruce clearly embraced risk, didn't he, in life? And, well, obviously in his work.
Definitely. Okay, so then, into this very established picture steps Amy Deschamps.
Mm.
Sources describe her very differently. Petite, articulate, brunette, blue eyes, grew up near Perth Amboy, New Jersey, had a tough childhood, apparently orphaned young,
Mm.
and started a carpet cleaning business pretty early on.
And she was twice divorced and, like a lot of people, moved to Vegas in '92. Maybe for the weather, a fresh start,
Opened another carpet cleaning business there. She was 49 around the time Bruce disappeared.
Okay.
They meet fall of 1995. Where else but a Texas Hold'em table at the Mirage?
Vegas cliche, almost.
Almost. And by all accounts, Bruce was immediately hooked.
Yeah, it was a whirlwind. Like, within days of meeting, she sells her condo and moves into his new place, this mini mansion.
Wow, days.
Days. And the gifts started flowing almost immediately. Lavish stuff. Diamond necklace, a turquoise Chevy Camaro, all within weeks.
Okay, that speed, the generosity, it definitely raised some eyebrows.
You bet.
And this is where you start seeing these really contrasting views of Amy. His family, especially his mother Sylvia, they were really suspicious of the speed, the gifts.
Well, yeah.
As one source put it, to some, it seemed inspired by finance, not romance.
Ouch. And that perception wasn't helped by reports from a former boyfriend. He apparently said Amy just loved money, and that all she ever used to say is, I want to retire.
Right. You can see how that narrative really feeds into the prosecution's later argument about motive, right? Greed.
Sets it up perfectly.
But it wasn't totally one-sided. Other accounts suggest Amy actually made Bruce happy. He was known for being moody, and she apparently even helped him manage his diet for his diabetes. He lost some weight. So, her influence wasn't seen the same way by everyone. Depends who you asked.
Yeah, different perspectives. Okay, so now, July 5th, 1996. This is where it gets really dark. Bruce Weinstein vanishes.
Completely disappears. Amy's initial explanation was pretty simple. He went out around 11 p.m. that night and just never came back.
But his mother, Sylvia, she immediately knew something was wrong.
Because of the routine.
Exactly. Bruce was a creature of habit. He never stayed out that late, ever. And the absolute key detail, he left his cell phone behind.
For a bookie.
That's his lifeline. He just wouldn't leave home without it. Impossible.
So her suspicion grows. Then the next morning, she goes over to his house and finds Amy shampooing the carpets.
Shampooing the carpets the morning after he disappears? That's odd.
Very odd. Meanwhile, Bruce's betting office employees are freaking out too. He hadn't made his usual early calls. One employee calls the house. Amy answers, apparently stammering that Bruce was out, would be back by 11 a.m.
Which is totally bizarre given his routine.
Totally. Brian Foster, the office manager, calls too, gets a similar vague non-answer. The whole team knew. Like, they said something's wrong.
So Sylvia hires a private investigator, Michael Wysocki. And his initial look around makes this really disturbing discovery.
Yeah.
Blood and a bullet hole on the flip side of Bruce's mattress.
Whoa. Okay, so that changes everything. That brings in the police detectives.
Right. They bring in luminol for the carpet, and boom, a glowing blue streak, a blood trail.
Where did it lead?
From the master bedroom, through the house, and into the garage.
Oh, man. Suggesting pretty clearly someone was killed in the bedroom and dragged out.
That was the strong implication, yeah.
Yeah.
But here's a sort of puzzling detail from the scene, at least initially.
Okay.
They didn't find a motor weapon. No shell casings, no other obvious bullet holes besides the one in the mattress. And searches of vehicles. Turned up no blood, no carpet fibers.
So a clean getaway, maybe, but they did find something else, right? The safety deposit box?
Ah, yeah, a box Amy had opened recently. It had $35,000 in sportsbook chips and some jewelry inside.
Interesting. Okay, so as the investigation heats up, Amy's story starts to, well, shift dramatically.
Yeah, she talks to PI Wysocki. And initially he reported she mentioned planning to leave the country. Said she was researching non-extradition countries.
Uh-oh. That sounds suspicious.
You'd think. But then, the very next day, she gives him, and later the police, a completely different narrative.
This is the mob hit story.
This is the mob hit story. 4 masked men, New York accents, broke in, shot Bruce, took his body, ordered her to clean up and just say he'd gone out.
Wow. So she's framing it as a mob thing related to his bookmaking.
Exactly. She even repeated this to the police in a taped interview, adding this detail that she got a call days later from the men saying they were watching her.
And she brought notes to the police interview.
Yeah. Claims she always kept notes for her business. A bit unusual for that kind of interview, maybe.
Maybe. So this is all happening. The investigation's ongoing, but Bruce is still missing. Until
August 11th, 1996. Over a month after he disappeared. His body is found, covered with stones out in the desert near Mesquite, Nevada.
Oh, wow. Must have been.
Yeah, decomposition was pretty advanced. It actually took until September to get a positive ID using dental records.
Grim. And the investigation wasn't just focused on Amy, right? There was someone else involved.
Right. They also zeroed in on Robert Wayne Jones. He was an employee from Amy's carpet cleaning business.
Ah, the carpet connection.
Yeah, he gets charged too. Prosecutors basically allege he supplied the gun Amy used and then helped her clean up and dispose of the body.
Okay, so with the body found, the evidence mounting, a fugitive warrant is issued for Amy Deschamps.
And she bolts. About a month after Bruce's body was found, so fall of '96, she has this really bizarre encounter with a cop in Maryland.
This is the speeding stop.
Yeah, pulled over for speeding, asked for ID, and she reportedly flashes her groin, trying for an informal resolution, as the source put it.
She did what? No way, an informal. Okay. Did that work?
No. Perhaps unsurprisingly, it did not work.
Shocker.
The cop then finds just a massive amount of cash, over $101,000, just kind of strewn around the car, along with the passport and wigs.
Wigs, passport, cash. Okay, yeah.
Red flags everywhere. She's arrested, sent back to Nevada.
But here's a crazy twist in the legal side. Because she hadn't been formally charged with murder yet, just the fugitive stuff.
Her bail was set incredibly low, Only $5,000.
5 grand after all that, and she...
Promptly paid it and vanished again. Disappeared completely. Successfully avoided capture for more than a year this time.
Wow. Okay, so this is where TV gets involved, right? America's Most Wanted.
Yep. January 1998. Her mugshot is blasted across national television. The show calls her, dramatically, the Black Widow of Las Vegas, suspected as a grisly murder.
That must have generated some heat.
It absolutely worked. Tips flooded in. And it turned out she'd been hiding in plain sight, really, using the name Sandy Wade.
Where?
At the Sunnier Palms nudist campground near Fort Pierce, Florida.
A nudist camp? Seriously?
Seriously. Reports say she was even actively participating in camp activities. Volleyball, dancing.
Yeah.
Just living life.
Unbelievable. So the show airs, tips come in.
She reportedly fled just hours before FBI agents showed up, tipped off maybe by the broadcast itself.
Wow. Close call.
But they tracked her across Florida to Port St. Lucie, arrested her a few days later. And interestingly, in her car this time, research on extradition treaties.
Suggesting she was planning maybe a longer escape route out of the country.
Seems likely. She was actually the 500th fugitive caught thanks to America's Most Wanted.
Quite a statistic. So this time, back to Vegas. No bail, charged with murder with a deadly weapon.
No bail this time. The trial starts in 1998.
And the prosecution lays out its case. Murder driven by greed. They paint Amy as manipulative, wanting Bruce's money, killing him when she couldn't get control.
Jones, her employee, accused of being the accomplice, helping with the gun, the cleanup, the disposal.
And the defense, what was their angle?
They pushed back hard. Their main point was physical impossibility. How could petite Amy, described as under 120 pounds, maybe having a bad hip, possibly move Bruce's 300-pound body by herself?
Yeah, that's a fair question.
And they hammered the lack of direct physical evidence linking her directly, like blood in any vehicles. They also brought up a neighbor's testimony. Someone who heard 3 distinct popping sounds that night, maybe suggesting multiple shots, or something else.
Okay, but the real bombshell, the thing that came back later, was testimony from a detective, right?
Yeah, former detective Alfred Leavitt. On the stand, he's asked about Amy's mob hit story, his assessment. He outright called it a fairy tale and said he didn't believe her.
Whoa, can a witness just say that? Call it a fairy tale.
Well, that became the issue. The judge actually tried to limit that kind of opinion testimony, but then the prosecutor
Doubled down.
repeated the fairy tale comment directly in their closing arguments, basically using it to hammer home the idea that Amy was a liar.
Okay, I can see how that would be a problem on appeal, but first, the verdict.
The first verdict came pretty swiftly in 1998. The jury found Amy Deschamps guilty, first-degree murder with use of a deadly weapon, robbery with use of a deadly weapon.
And the sentence?
Harsh. 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, plus another 12 years tacked on for the robbery charge.
Life without parole, twice. Wow.
And Jones, Robert Wayne Jones, the employee, found guilty of accessory to murder after the fact. His sentence is reported slightly differently in places, but it was at least 2 years, possibly up to 5.
And Bruce's mother spoke at the sentencing.
Yeah, Sylvia White spoke very movingly, apparently, about the family's pain, the vacant chair Bruce left behind, the impact.
Understandable. But, like we hinted, that wasn't the end of the legal road. Deschamps appealed.
She did, and the Nevada Supreme Court reviewed the whole case. In October 2000, they made a pretty significant decision.
They overturned it.
They overturned the first-degree murder conviction and the sentence. Big reversal.
Why? What was the reasoning? Was it the fairy tale comment?
That was central to it, yeah. The Supreme Court basically ruled that the former detective calling her story a fairy tale was an impermissible comment on her credibility, meaning it's the jury's job to decide if someone's telling the truth, not a witness, especially not a law enforcement witness offering an opinion like that.
Right. And the prosecutor repeating it.
Exactly. The court said the prosecutor repeating that phrase in closing arguments just amplified the error, unfairly swayed the jury against her, and ultimately denied her a fair trial.
So that alone was enough.
That was huge. But they also found another error. The trial judge shouldn't have denied Deschamps' defense access to the private investigator Wysocki's notes.
Why were those notes important?
Because they could have been crucial for cross-examining Wysocki, especially about his financial arrangement and his close relationship with the Weinstein family, which might show bias.
Ah, okay, so multiple errors.
Yeah, the Supreme Court said the cumulative effect of these errors was just too significant. It demanded a whole new trial for Amy Deschamps.
Wow. So, facing another trial, potentially with the same evidence but different rules about testimony.
The prosecution offered her a plea deal.
And she took it.
She did. In July 2001, Amy Deschant pleaded guilty to a lesser charge, second-degree murder.
Second degree. Okay. So what was the final sentence then?
The sentencing for that plea came in September 2001. She got 10 to 25 years in prison.
Okay, 10 to 25. But she'd already served time, right?
Right. She received credit for the roughly 3.5 years she'd already served since her initial arrest back after the America's Most Wanted capture.
So doing the math, that meant she'd be eligible for parole after serving 10 years total from that first arrest date.
Exactly, making her potentially eligible for release about 6.5 years after she took the plea deal. Much different outcome than 2 life sentences.
Huge difference. Did she say anything at this final sentencing?
Yeah, she stated she accepted the agreement for peace and that she felt a tremendous loss. Sources noted Bruce's mother, Sylvia, reportedly just kind of sneered when she said that.
Oof. Yeah, emotions still raw, clearly. And her parole status. Did she get out?
The sources vary a bit depending on when they were published, but they generally indicate she was denied parole at her first hearing in 2008, but was expected or scheduled for release at some point after that. Likely served a significant portion of that 10 to 25.
Okay, let's pull back a bit and try to connect some of these dots. This whole story feels so Vegas.
Well, absolutely. The setting is crucial. It's a city built on gambling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which naturally attracts all sorts of associated businesses, some legit, some less so.
And there's that whole history, the connection to figures like Bugsy Siegel, this legacy of people making fortunes but also meeting violent ends. It hangs in the air.
Definitely. And Bruce was operating squarely in that less so category. Illegal bookmaking, even in Vegas, that operates outside the sanctioned system.
What does that involve, typically?
Well, often these shadow networks, extending credit to gamblers, which is risky,
Yeah.
attracts high rollers, sure, but also people with serious problems. It's inherently dangerous, sometimes linked to organized crime for collecting debts.
Which feeds into Amy's initial mob hit story.
Exactly. Though, obviously, investigators and prosecutors didn't really buy that angle in this case.
Right. Now, here's a really striking detail, kind of a wait, what moment from the sources that connects back to the family business angle.
Okay.
Years after Bruce's murder, in October 2002, his mother, Sylvia White, and his nephew, Mark Weinstein,
The son of his brother Stephen.
presumably,
Yeah.
them, along with Bruce's former office manager, Brian Todd Foster,
The guy waiting for the morning calls.
that guy, they were all arrested, felony bookmaking and racketeering charges.
Wow. So the family business just kept going.
Apparently, authorities called it a pretty big operation, handling hundreds of thousands a week. The official statement was clear. Sylvia and Mark were part of this ongoing family operation. They even noted Bruce himself had connections to operations in California when he was killed.
So the illegal bookmaking didn't die with Bruce.
Hmm.
His relatives just carried on.
Seems like it. So what does this whole tangled mess tell us? I mean, it really highlights how these illegal economies like bookmaking function, right? The huge risks involved for everyone connected, the potential for violence.
Totally. And it shows how fast relationships can form, especially in a place like Vegas where money is so central. And how those perceptions of motive, was it love, was it money, become absolutely key to understanding what happened. Or trying to, anyway.
And the legal system's role here is just fascinating, isn't it? That dramatic turnaround by the Nevada Supreme Court, it really gives you a solid nugget about fair trials.
Yeah, that whole fairy tale thing. A witness, even an ex-detective, can't just declare someone a liar on the stand like that. It underlines how crucial those procedural rules are.
And it shows just how complex the path to justice can be. You go from a first-degree murder conviction, 2 life sentences, all the way back down to a plea deal for second-degree murder with a finite sentence. It's quite a journey.
A really winding road.
So this deep dive into the Bruce Weinstein case, it really reveals all these layers, doesn't it? Intense personal drama, the hidden world of illegal bookmaking humming beneath the Vegas glitter.
And just how much that specific Vegas context, the money, the risk, the relationships, shaped everything that happened, fatally in this case.
It also really underscores the crucial role, even if it seems messy sometimes, of the legal process in trying to ensure fairness.
Yeah.
And just how hard it is to figure out the absolute truth, the real motives, when you have such conflicting stories.
It's rarely simple, is it?
Rarely. Okay, so here's a final provocative thought for you to chew on. Considering that Bruce's illegal bookmaking was effectively a family business, and that his own mother and nephew were arrested for running that exact same kind of operation years after he was murdered, What does that persistence tell us about the nature of that world? Does it endure despite tragedy?
Hmm.
And thinking about that deep family connection to the business, does it in any way maybe shift your perception of potential motives or theories surrounding Bruce's death in the first place? Something to mull over as you continue your own deep dives.